Here we go.
11.
It is Tuesday, and if it's Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. European, that means it's now. It's this time. It's our time. We got some business to discuss up top. There's a specific reason that I did not say it's your reason to stay inside. Let's talk about that while we get going here. Hey guys, we made it. We're on. It's happening. So first order of business, it's September. It's September. We started this in March, and I gotta say, I didn't think we'd still be doing this in September, and the longer we do it, the further the outlook sort of comes. It's sort of just become a thing that we do now, and maybe, I guess we're just gonna keep doing that. But related to that, I kind of wanted to just float this at the top of the stream here. I think maybe as this becomes more of a more separate from the original March thought of just hey, let's just hang out because we're all locked down together. Let's hang out inside together. That's sort of starting to change now. Certain countries are not inside as much as others, and this has become more of a regular happening in our lives. And so maybe it's time to rename it and kind of make it a little more official. So if you guys have thoughts, I'm thinking of a rename, a kind of repackage, no longer being your reason to stay inside, but something else. Maybe just a reason live stream, but not quite that lame. So let me know. Let us know in the comments. And while we're at it, you're more than welcome to let me know in the comments what you like about the stream, where you want to see the stream go, guests you've liked, guests you've hated. I hope you don't mention our guest today, because our guests today are the first in 6 months, our first repeat guests that I'm bringing on. And I say guests plural because I think this might be the first. Well, no, I've done 2 people in one room, but this is the first time I'm having 2 separate guests in 2 separate locations on, and I'm excited to have them. You guys know them, and we should bring them on, really. But the nature of them coming on is that these guys this is an in-house thing. These are friends and colleagues of mine who know more about Reason than maybe anyone else, both as users, as designers, as feature deciders. I see Mattias off to the side giving a questionable, I'm not sure about that. But let's bring them on and say hello, guys. Please welcome Ludvig and Mattias. This, let me get your titles right. Reason Product Manager and Reason Design Brains. What is your, Ludvig, what's your official title? I've known you as guy with all the answers. So.
Product designer.
Yeah, okay.
That's me.
Product designer, and he's ex-product manager too. People tend to miss that.
Before someone kicked me off the
Oh
throne.
man, is this a power grab?
It was.
Oh my gosh.
Those were in the record days. Hello,
Hi,
everyone.
Welcome to the internet, guys. Nice to have you on. So I should mention to people who are watching, the reason, pun not intended, that I had you guys on again is because last week we had a new instrument hit our shop that we came out with called Friktion, and it has gotten, there's a lot of, I hate to use the markety type word, there's a lot of buzz about it. A lot of people are talking about it and trying it and excited about it. We were all excited while it was in development, but now people are externally excited about it. And so I thought it would be a good idea to bring you guys on both because you played a lot of, not all of, but a lot of the key decision making in Friktion, and you know it and have had more time with it than we all have. And so I thought it'd be fun to kind of show people the thinking behind it and some tips and tricks. I made a tutorial video.
Yeah.
But can you maybe just, before we get going on it, can maybe you tell us a little bit about the background of Friktion? Because I've heard rumors, I honestly don't know this, I've heard rumors that this has been in development for years?
It depends on what you mean with development, I think.
Okay.
I mean, first of all, we should mention that this is a brainchild partly of Peter Jubel, as per usual.
Yep.
The Reason Studios, one of the founders and our resident DS.
I think called himself Lord of Algorithms, so we're gonna call him that now.
Wizard. So, and I mean, he is constantly developing stuff. So probably some seed for this have been on his hard drive for years, but I don't think it's really that. It's not been a product. It's nothing aimed for a product.
It's like the whole company has been working on it for years.
No. It's more like Pelle. He likes, of course. I mean, it's his job, but he also likes trying stuff out, right? And I think he's probably tried, virtual string instruments out a lot of times during all of these years, right? And there might have been versions he was happy with, and versions he thought were horrible, and something that was just, a basic carpless strong, did it work kind of thing. I don't know.
And I think the bowing, all this, actually making this work, that was new for him as well.
Yeah.
I think.
So we could summarize maybe. I mean, Friktion, the product as you know it, it's been in development for quite a while. But I think it really started when we started, trying to make it a product rather than a thing that was really exciting.
Sort of say, yeah. What is this you're working on, and how can we actually package that into something that is actually musically useful, and not just kind of a. I mean, I guess in some ways it was a neat DSP experiment for him and an algorithmic experiment, but maybe not something that.
Well, yeah, and probably a playing experiment. Pelle's an amazing piano player, so he sometimes makes things that he, tries to play.
Exactly.
He has. Some of the we should give him a shout out. He did some of the musical examples for this one.
Yeah, he did a lot of the musical examples.
And they're
I took
good.
pretty much everything he did.
Quite a lot of the patches as well. Almost the most of the classical string patches.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. If there's a very realistic instrument, it's generally Peter who's made the patch.
So I've known Peter personally for 10 years, and I just had no idea that he was as musically talented as he is. I was really surprised actually with some of the stuff. I mean, that happens a lot with, there's so many musicians in the company, but we're all in our lane of what we're doing, and then suddenly you go like, oh my God, I didn't know that Eric does music or whatever,
Yeah, right. I just got the first comment on my magma chart, so I'm happy now.
Oh,
we can talk about whatever.
Go, good. Okay, we broke the magma ice. Who gave it to you there?
It's Bill Copeland, a guy with taste, apparently.
There you go. Well, so I wonder, in our discussion of Friktion, I wanted to actually, you kind of let a little terminology fly by there, Mattias, when you mentioned carpless strong, and I this sort of a good entry point into us talking about Friktion, because that starts with talking about physical modeling, and for people that may not know what physical modeling is, or maybe they've heard the term and they know basically what it is, but maybe there's a way we could kind of get people up to speed on what it is and why Friktion took that approach to its design rather than, I guess, what we might consider the more common method of strings, which is to take recorded samples of strings.
Okay. So first of all, I mean, obviously we want to make something that we haven't done before. That's always a good path to take. And the other thing is that when we kind of made this into a product, what we really wanted it to be expressive and something that could be controlled, when you can continuously control the sound and the timbre, whatever it's called. Mm-hmm. And then it's a really good way to actually, I mean, if you have a sample, you have a sample. Then you can process the sample afterwards. You can filter it, or you can add some LFO or whatever.
Right.
But maybe not so much more than that. But
you're pretty stuck with like the base material in that way.
Right. So in this case, instead of using samples, it's actually a way to mathematically calculate what would happen if a string was excited like this at this particular position and with this particular bowing movement or whatever.
Yeah, and the material has these properties, and
there's a body, like a violin body. No, I changed it to a drum instead. Haha. And see what happens. So, and that gives us another both. I mean, sound creation, sound design freedom, and also a performance freedom. That's
right.
I think the latter part, I think, is the thing that really surprises. I mean, it surprised me. I think it surprises people when they try it, because the upside of physical modeling is that instead of relying on a sample per thing that you want to do, let's say a violin, right? So you want to bow it with a hard attack, and you want to pluck it, and you want to go up and down the string. All of those would have to be a recorded sample, right?
And very
physical
often,
modeling-
the way those get laid out, they're separate tracks in a sequence.
Exactly,
right?
yeah, and especially in older libraries, they've improved a lot. I'm not saying it's bad, but you need to load up different things. It's like, here's the pluck instrument version, and here's the glidey or tremolo instrument version, and so on. With physical modeling, you can do all of that and control it. And I think Pelle's mission with this, and I'm maybe putting words in his mouth, but was making sure it was actually playable, right? That you can, as someone with a simple keyboard, make it sound convincing with one thing, right?
Right. And I'll attest for a second to that as a non-keyboard player. I fake it when I need to, but I'm definitely a fretted instrument player by sort of my primary ability. And that was my first experience when I started playing with the early alpha that you guys sent me. I sort of thought like, there's a certain intuitiveness to making this sound expressive the way I wanted it to, in a way that I haven't had success with sample libraries, including our own sample presets in Orchestra. There's things there where I would have to kind of stack to get maybe the combination of articulations that I wanted. So, well, should we maybe pop it up on screen? I don't know who wants to volunteer to be the screen sharer, but maybe it's worth kind of poking around and actually looking at it in practice a little bit.
Whether you or me, who's going to be the first player?
Start with the plain old Violin Solo default patch.
Yeah, go for it. And full disclosure here, Ludvig is a much better keyboard player than I am.
You're
so whenever there's going to be
but I'm not a classical. Thing. I'm not a classical player. I'm a jazz man.
Yeah, you're a jazz man.
So I'm just going to use the reason window here. That's good, like this.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. That's perfect.
All right. So here it is, and right now I'm kind of moving the mod wheel. Although, let me start with a trick right off, because I happen to be using a keyboard that doesn't have a mod wheel, and and this particular instrument, Friktion, is very, very dependent almost on a way to continuously control what we call articulation, the sustain control in this case, and then most of the patches have it set to mod wheel. So what to do? I actually had an expression pedal instead, because I'm using my Nord Electro, which is more like an organ, and it has an expression pedal input.
So you're using a pedal with a foot right now? That's how that's moving? Or?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. And to make this happen, this is a Reason standalone thing only. You have to do it in other ways if you're using an audio, of course. But this is a good tip. Additional remote overrides. And I went down here, and here are all our performance, as you can see. And let's see. So what I did here, I actually mod wheel. I replaced it with expression.
Yeah,
Just double-clicked it like this. And
so it's like a translation.
Is all of the mod wheels.
Yes. Okay. Gotcha. That's
so my foot is my mod wheel.
That's a good tip in general. But I wondered.
It frees up your hands too. You got to say. Exactly. I was surprised with the expression foot pedal thing. But you can do
because then you can do two-handed, but also control the mod wheel. Let's take one step back and make this explicit for people that are watching, and the idea of this mod wheel and how it, or the articulation section, how it factors in. This is something I talked about this in the tutorial I made. This is something that is completely central to the way string players play. So much so that it's sort of, as you're learning the instrument, you're just learning to do this kind of dynamic swells and pullbacks, and it's phrasing. It's how phrasing works on a violin, but it's not intuitive to a piano player.
No, maybe not. And actually, this goes for the bowing mode. You have a pluck mode as well, but let's stay in the bowing mode here. So what happens is when I play a note, this is very, very sensitive to velocity, how hard I play. So if I play it very soft like this, you can see that white line in the middle of the screen moving up, or I play it hard like this, it falls down. And where it ends, it depends on the mod wheel, on the sustain control, which means I can strike it hard like that and get it to kind of almost fade away completely, or I can do it the other way around, raising the sustain and starting with.
Right.
And
I can
especially the going from low to high is that generally sounds really nice when you're playing. That's why many of the samples tend to have that kind of articulation often, right?
Yeah.
They're swelling
Low to
up
high.
because because it doesn't sound as jarring.
It's like a
It's funny because I tend to actually like the opposite. I mean, I agree with you, Mattias, but I also think that my first impression of like when I went like, "Ooh, this is something neat," was that opposite direction, the sort of hard attack into a softer sustain. That felt-
that's what generally is harder to kind of make working.
Yeah, most of my violin interaction now comes from fiddle players in my acoustic world that I live in, and that's a classic thing that you start. Your attacks are sort of these like kickoffs to songs, junk, junk, junk.
Yeah, right.
You've got that real kind of sharp attack.
Yeah,
So
it's the difference between a fiddle player in a folk music band and a movie soundtrack. You tend to
Exactly.
get more of the swelling in the movies and more of the attack at the wherever you play folk music.
that's right. Now I'm
Right.
imagining the disaster of a fiddle player getting hired to do a movie soundtrack and it just going horribly wrong.
Right, and they go, and then build the suspense here. Okay.
Okay.
But I mean, the key here is that I continue to have control over the articulation while I'm holding the note, because I still I can change the mod wheel, so I play something like.
Right.
So when I bring the mod wheel or the sustain completely down, that's when I lift the bow from the string. Really, that's what that simulates. So that's when a note ends.
Right.
So as long as I have sustain up at some level, I'm still bowing at some speed or with some certain pressure.
This is something for people that might be trying out Friktion. This is sort of a tip to like reach for that mod wheel early on, like when you first
Early
load Friktion
and often.
Early and often, yeah. When you load Friktion into the rack and you hit a note, I don't know what his default setting is at, but it's on the lower side, kind of waiting to be swelled and stuff. So you'll want to
Absolutely.
you'll want to grab that mod wheel and see what it does. On most patches too, it will contribute.
Yeah, especially those. I mean, it's the bowed, the string patches that are bowed.
Yeah.
If you go to pluck, for example, if I would select a patch like pizzicato, which is in pluck mode, or if I just switch it to pluck, then this doesn't really do anything, the articulation section.
Because there is no sustain, right?
No,
Right, exactly. It doesn't have anything
Exactly.
to bow. Another
go
tip
back
when
to
trying this out and working with the mod wheel, it's easy to get over eager and really go from the minimum to the maximum all the time. So you really go. That's not how someone would really play it.
Oh, I see what
Right?
you're saying.
They wouldn't actually go from almost touching the string to going full whammy, you know?
Right.
So
That's like
make
the-
sure you really
hotel
try to
restaurants
balance that.
violin player.
full whammy. I like. I don't know if a violin player,
It was
classical
an
violinist, has ever.
Anchorman thing.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Whammy! But that took me a long time because I'm so used to synth patches, right? Where you just the mod wheel is your favorite part of the cool synth patch.
Right.
While in reality, you if you go around the middle, you get a more natural sounding.
It reminds
level
me
of the
in a
bowing.
totally unrelated way. When I was a early teenager, even maybe 12 or something, I was getting into recording engineering and music tech. And my dad was kind of like my learning buddy, you know, like he was encouraging me, but he would also help me. And so we got like a mixer. He got me a mixing console, and I was so excited to have this Mackie mixer. And we sat down to kind of figure out what it did. But he was still like, dad leading the way. And we'd go through the EQ section, and he would turn, like the mids all the way up, and then he'd turn them all the way down, and he'd be like, that's what that does. And it's like, wait.
Yeah.
now that I forgot to learn, it's like, actually, no, it's really in the middle. Like if you judged any band off of its maximum and its minimum, you're getting the wrong impression.
How
But
you try
still
out EQs.
adventurous though. I mean, my dad he continuously went back and reset the bass and treble controls on our stereo too. So we're 12 o'clock because that's
to
the
be
way they
in the
should
middle.
be, like the factory settings.
Yeah, been there.
That is the way to mix, make a new video,
I mean,
mixing
it's
everything at
obviously
Unity.
supposed to work like
Right.
that.
There was a question in the chat which I think is good to answer on stream too. If it's possible to manually bow Friktion using the mod wheel.
No, it isn't.
And it isn't, but we do have these trig keys, which I think kind of leads us to the next really important thing of playing Friktion.
Sure, you want to
Right.
go down to the control keys as a discussion,
Sure.
you mean, or?
Good point. So I know where they're coming from with this, because there are other physical modeling string instruments that actually lets you, or maybe requires you to emulate the bowing. You get nothing unless you continuously.
Oh, you kind of have to keep the bow going.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Or
you have to keep the bow. Yeah.
Whatever controller. Yeah.
So, but this is not how this one works, and we actually had a conscious design decision early on that it should be possible to play it without any specific.
Yeah.
So that's why, for example, even if I don't have a mod wheel, I can actually just select sustain knob here, and I get a small
and just
knob.
set the
Does the
sustain.
same thing, but it's so I can just set it to some good value. I can still play it,
Right.
and also that it's possible to make it use. I mean, you can, yeah.
I've messed around a little bit with the
alternatives.
pressure and things like that, as key pressure.
There was even an early alpha version which did bow with the mod wheel,
Really?
but
I
it was it was at Pelle's desk and you had to kind of be there. I think. But,
Is that an
which
open
was
invitation
fun,
to
but
all
it
recent
made
users?
yeah,
Post Corona.
but it made it it's hard to play that way too. And just when you think about it, there's also not enough mod wheel for a bow, right? The resolution of a mod wheel,
Yeah, like a
compared
ribbon
to
controller
a
might
long
be
violin
maybe.
bow, right?
Yeah,
For
yeah.
example. So that's why it often those instruments that do have that kind of bowing, they often are made for a specific type of controller.
Right.
Controller
Yeah.
that might have really high resolution or a way of playing. Or
Well, I will say, as a failed keyboard player, I do appreciate the fact that, like, while it's best when you're doing that, if you do want to lay off it or need to, if you wanted to do some two-handed thing, you can. It's not,
Yeah.
Right.
it's
Right,
it's not that you're
exactly.
tethered to that control. It's
Yeah,
just
and I mean, quite a few patches coming with this one do not use that mod wheel at all. Not at least not for that particular articulation purpose.
Right.
To be vibrato or whatever. Which brings me to an interesting thing. I think you mentioned that earlier on, Ryan, that in several patches, the mod wheel also, like this, goes to scaling the vibrato amount.
yes. We talked about you and I talked about this
Yeah.
yesterday, but not
Yeah.
on stream yet.
All right. So
Should,
it's
you want
good.
to mention this, and then we'll go to control keys, Mattias. We haven't
Yeah,
forgotten.
exactly. So if I start like that, it's no vibrato at all, but
Right.
so that can be very expressive.
Those
if
are
you
so.
like it.
These are the. So to make it completely obvious to anyone, what we've got going on up there in the corner is that the vibrato is actually assigned to the mod wheel, so that they are moving in tandem. Now you've got
Yeah, so I set the maximum amount of vibrato here with the amount knob, and then the mod wheel scales that, so it will go to maximum when mod wheel is at top.
if you turned that mod wheel assignment off, we would just hear just a straight up volume swell.
Yeah. I would hear the vibrato even at the very low level.
Oh, I see. We're getting it all the time, vibrato.
Yeah.
But if you
exactly.
turn, okay, I see. So and then you'd have to turn the amount down to get rid of it.
Then again,
that's
you could
also
also
why you can have it as a separate thing, right? So you could have an expression for vibrato or aftertouch or mod wheel for articulation.
Aha! Oh, I hadn't thought of that. So if you changed that vibrato to what would does it say key pressure? Does it say
Pressure, yeah.
Pressure, yeah. So you change that to pressure, and now you've got a two-dimensional articulation where you can swell the
right.
note
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
press harder, and you get the vibrato. And
Most patches again are set up for really easy playing.
Right.
And mod wheel is the one thing you can almost count on a keyboard having, so that's why it's generally there in the basic patch. But feel free to assign it to whatever you have.
Right, but that is kind of cool. Like when I think about, again, like, because I do come from a fingerboard-based instrument, and you as well, Mattias, and maybe you play a little bit of guitar,
ham-fisted,
basically.
yes.
What's that?
Ham-fisted guitar.
Hand-fisted guitar, yeah. But you know, there is a thing when you play vibrato, you are kind of digging in. There's a finger pressure element to that. So
Yeah.
there's a certain, like, if you come from that background, maybe that actually would be a neat thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to try it out after the stream now to kind of see how that feels. To kind of,
I mean, if you have a good pitch bend, you can always use that for vibrato as well.
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Don't forget that the pitch bend is still a pitch bend. I'm gonna show that a little bit
cool.
later too.
Well, yeah. Let's not miss the other key thing that Mattias was getting into here with the control keys.
You want to talk about control keys, Mattias?
I can talk a little bit about control keys. Yes.
I'm gonna move the screen to you.
I wish you
Although
could
I'm
do
gonna
that,
kind of-
but I'll share my screen instead.
I'll move it to you. Now.
Okay, here we are. I have the browser open. Otherwise, it should look pretty similar to what Ludvig was showing you. I think one of the things that takes a little bit of figuring out when you play Friktion is the control keys. because it does require you to do this kind of two-handed approach, right? So for just playing, you're always fine by just playing. Oh, I have a ton of reverb too.
Huge reverb.
That was nice.
That was nice.
It's
I
really
like it.
cool. I mean,
Yeah.
It's all film
Sounded
score, the
better
best
than
reverb.
mine.
We know that.
But
However, to get the really
that what you were
kind
doing
of
there is just the kind of standard, or if you want to call
play.
it standard,
Yep,
mod
right.
wheel and
Let's
fingers.
see, I can maybe even do this a little bit, so you can see my mod wheel. Less of my face, more of my mod wheel, right?
Right.
That would still sound good, but to get some of the more, going between different kinds of sounds, it's all about these control keys here at the bottom. So first, just changing the type of articulation. Ludde showed you pluck, right? And sure, you can click up here. But you see there's also a little letter here everywhere. Ah, D, that means D is the
Yes,
control
right.
key for pluck. So I can go.
So you
note
press the
key,
D key
the
in that
lowest
octave,
octave.
and you're switching.
So when I hold down the D key, I'm toggling to pluck. You can do the same for tremolo, for example.
Right, which also has its own section.
Right up here with the rate.
Right.
So those are they're changing how you're playing Friktion, and therefore they're quite important to get the different sounds. That's what I mentioned would typically be different samples if this was a sample basis.
Right. There's a question before we jump to some of those other control keys. There's a question that came in about the wood resonance. Eric Zwag says he likes the wood in the resonance, and he's curious if that was modeled. I mean, you guys can answer better than I, but I think everything's modeled. The whole thing is modeled. So
You would be slightly wrong. The resonator section is impulse responses.
but is that? I guess now we get into, is that the wood he's talking about? Are these the droids you're looking for?
If it is in that case, then he's listening to the vibration of wood that we've recorded. So therefore, that would be correct, right?
Yeah.
You've struck a violin body, recorded how that sounds, and made that with convolution.
So we'll
technology.
get to the resonator in a bit, Eric. But
that's
that's
a
an interesting
spoiler.
answer. That okay. There's a little bit of almost convolution going on, right? That
Yeah.
we'll talk about.
It is convolution.
It is convolution.
There's a lot of
that-
bit.
that-
That's what I
There
was
will
saying.
there will be a
particular
good
part of it.
trick. There will be a good trick regarding that in a little while.
Oh,
I think.
cool.
Another thing is just the other parts of the playing. So vibrato you mentioned, of course. You can turn that off by just pressing B, the B key. There's also glide. Glide is set to auto in most of the patches. And this is, I think, one of the most important things to kind of quickly learn to get a realistic playing. So when you move between notes at a very low velocity of your playing, so instead of going hard pushes down on the keys, if you do really softly, it glides between the notes. That's
Right.
the auto mode. And once you get that, you'll find it's much easier to play, an expressive little line where you go. Without actually doing any kind of keyboard control
Right.
except you're playing.
That was one when
So-
when I was first testing this out, where it happened so naturally that I didn't know I wanted it until the phrase I was playing did it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, that's what I would expect a string player to play. That little.
It's one of those things that I didn't even know how it worked, but I realized I got glides when I wanted to get glides,
Yes.
which is a testament to the design, I think.
Yes,
from,
absolutely,
from Pelle.
absolutely.
The other thing that's good to know is that you can force the instrument to be polyphonic or monophonic or legato, right? So another good thing with this being an instrument that's modeled is that you can play way more strings than the violin should have.
Right.
But actually, it's good to, even if you set it to mono, it will still be possible to, if you play several notes at the same time, even though you're in mono mode, which might be confusing. But
Why?
consider a violin. The thing is, what you're actually doing when you're playing monophonic is you're playing notes on the same string, but there are still several strings.
Exactly.
So you can still play a double stop or a chord.
So if you go more than a fifth away, you can go polyphonic, or can you even do it?
No, that's what you set with the auto range.
Exactly.
So if you're in auto mono mode, like it is right now,
Yep.
the range there is how it's like a zone around the note you're playing. If you play a note within that zone, not the note legato.
So
then
plus
it
or
will kind
minus
of-
6 semitones, you're going to be
Right.
mono.
So if I do a really big leap now that would glide, I don't think it will.
Right.
Right? No glide. Totally glide because
not
it's within the
not
range.
only glide, it will also be.
It's cutting
polyphonic.
off
You-
the note.
Yeah, yeah. It would also be properly polyphonic. There's another
right.
model copy doing
This is
it.
tricky. You really have to kind of just. It's tricky to explain, but once you start playing with it, it kind
Yeah.
of.
And there's
understand.
for the real deep divers, there's we make that visible. So you can see this patch. There's a little thing called string violin to high damp here. This actually tells the damp to change depending on which string of an actual violin it would be. So that's all really kind of, I can hardly explain it, but it makes the patches behave more violin-like. Because
Yeah.
if it's the same string, the damping of the string will sound like this.
Let us
But if you
gladly
switch string,
refer you
it's,
to the
know,
manual in that case.
yeah, yeah.
For
But,
further
That's when
reading.
you know that you have the product designer on the
You've stumped us.
stream. Refer to the manual, which is, sadly,
But-
all too often overlooked, I think, by people that just dive in and want to get started.
Exactly. So
Yeah, me included.
I wanted to show two more of these keys, and then
Yeah.
I'll tag you back in. I think one of the coolest ones when I started using this is the harmonics, just because it's exciting. But harmonics F sharp will just basically be like you're playing we call it a flageolet. What's it called, Ryan?
An harmonic.
I don't
It's
know.
just called an harmonic, but it's called something else too. Anyway,
Uh-huh.
if you do that, you'll get it an octave above, like you're gently pushing the string at the middle. So you would get, if you
Yeah,
have a
you're not-
guitar and you
you're-
hold the finger on the 12th fret instead of pushing it down, you'll get the harmonic.
So what you're doing, you're dampening out you're removing the fundamental note, and you only get an
You
overtone.
just hear the overtones.
Yeah.
So basically, you'll hear if I play the same note now, this one, and I push harmonic,
So
it's
now,
thin and weedy and up there.
to the initial sound, it just sounds like you went up an octave. But
Yep.
But if you, my experience is if you go into the higher ranges, and particularly if you do some of the polyphonic stuff, that's where it starts to go like,
Yeah.
it gets very cinematic sounding to me. That's like that, I don't know, the opening of the, I
Right.
don't know, I'm going
And
to reference
that's
an
a
old
great
movie
part
like
of it,
The Fugitive
but,
or something, where it's like you've got,
Yeah, right.
I have a crazy
Good
patch
mood.
doing stuff with harmonics
Good.
later on.
So then I
you
won't
wanna-
then I won't spoil that. But the harmonic can do a lot of stuff.
Right.
One thing that I want to show my favorite cheat, because harmonics, if you've played a string instrument, you know you can hit the string and then you gently push the finger on to get the harmonic continue ringing.
Ah,
Here, because of ease of playing, it requires you to re-trigger, right? So I'm pushing down harmonic, but it's still the same note, so I need to play it again.
yes.
That's why there's this little key called aux,
Oh,
auxiliary.
perfect timing. The question just came in, Mattias.
There we go. So if I take aux key C, I can say, when I press this key, that's going to do stuff. My favorite thing is to do exactly that, to make that change the finger pressure of the harmonic. So if I take this down, I'm not pushing my finger down on the string at all, so it's the same note.
Yep.
But if I then say, okay, but when I hit key C, that's going to increase the touch.
You're doing this in that little matrix there, right?
Yeah, so the key, aux key C,
Yep.
will send harmonic touch up by 50.
Wow.
And you can also make that any value. Make it scream and be weird, right? So that way you can make, when you're playing and you're kind of adding the harmonic, which is very uncommon, but really cool.
Yeah.
It's
A couple of
bonus
questions.
trick.
Can you latch the key switches? I don't think you can you?
You can latch that particular key. So
Yeah, in fact, it says aux key latched,
Hey.
just for that reason, because
Okay.
if you have a specific thing you would like to latch, then that's available.
let's just back up a little grann. A little grann.
A little
to say in
grann.
Swedish. Sorry.
We can do the rest if it makes you more comfortable, Ludwig. We'll do the rest of the stream in Swedish to 7 people instead of.
No. Hold on. Latch might mean different things. So it's not totally clear what what the person asking actually meant here. Because latch could just mean that the button itself latches, which they would do if you press them up in the panel, like click, or harmonics, for example. There's your latching buttons. But the keys, the control keys are not latching. Those are momentary. Those are temporary.
Okay.
But so so that thing aux key latched. That's another meaning of the word latched, and that means it latches on to a note.
Right.
This is deep stuff, but it's really good. It's like this. See if I can. Yeah. If that's the aux key latched, whatever it's mapped to do, that will happen only to notes being played while the aux key is pressed. So if you start by playing one, say key 1, that's one note. Let's try it. Aux key latched to something.
I'll do harmonics because it's easy to hear, I think.
Is it? Yeah, maybe it is. Okay, maybe it is.
Let's try.
Right. So
I'm gonna play these notes.
But no, now you do in touch. So that won't. Yeah, okay, it will. Yeah, right. It will work. So you play one note first.
Yep.
Hold it. Then you press the aux key latch and hold that, and then you press another note. And it's So that one went up in the harmonics, but the first one was unaffected because it will only affect.
Even though there's
notes.
One control.
Interesting.
It basically duplicated itself, saying, okay, this first note, keep it here. The next notes, take it away.
And that can be really, that's good to use in some scenarios when you're playing fast passages and you want to some notes should be affected in some way or not.
Right.
We'll leave the harmonics alone for a little while because there's cooler stuff.
The way we got onto these control keys is maybe worth mentioning, or maybe we mentioned that somewhere else. The trig keys.
That's what I'm getting to.
Oh, cool.
Exactly. I'm just going to change patch.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Because this is the patch I think I can explain why it's good here. But
before you do, maybe it's worth. People are about to have an instrument shift because we're not talking about. We're not even talking about a bow. Oh no, we are. It's a bowed, right? This is a bowed instrument.
Actually, I'll start with the. I can start with the regular patch and then go over, and you can get that. So we don't get too confused. So, regular violin patch first. Let's start there.
Yeah.
The question about bowing, that's what the trig keys is for. Basically, you re-trigger the playing. So without having to change the notes and not doing pressing multiple times, you can use E and D sharp here to.
So this is the equivalent if I'm a.
And those are velocity sensitive.
Yes. If I'm playing a violin, that's the point at which I'm changing the direction.
Direction.
Yeah. I have to say that this was a welcome thing for me because I won't shame it by name, but I had a sample library that I bought of strings, and that point, if you sustained a note, they just had it kind of preset where it was like after 6 seconds it had a re-trigger bow thing, and you couldn't shift it. So if I had a passage that I needed to hold, for 2 measures, and then I wanted the change to happen, it might come 1.5 and a little bit, like it wasn't musical. So I had to render the audio and then time stretch and reason to actually put those bow changes, which is like
things you do.
Ideal.
Yeah, things you do to get the result you want. But
exactly.
An important thing about trig, I think there's two things to show. So the tremolo has a fixed rate. The trig keys don't. So if you want to play something tremolo-like, you can do that at any speed you want. So.
Hey.
I'm not that fast in my left hand, but if I was.
Right.
But it isn't now. So that's really useful. And like Ludvig said, they're velocity sensitive, which is really important. So if you don't pay attention to the velocity there, you'll get a surprising amount of.
That is interesting though, because again, like part of what I enjoy about sort of the intuitive expressiveness of this is when you did your little Vivaldi thing there, your fingers just trying to go faster, they naturally go a little, faster velocity wise, harder, and and so it just responds as you would expect it to.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also this is a completely different patch, also a string instrument in this case. I believe a Chinese string instrument that I almost don't dare pronounce the name, but you can see the spelling up here. So that's good.
We're Swedish. I mean, we can't pronounce it.
We can't do it properly.
Ludwig
But-
said passages recently, just a few sentences ago.
So we're
about
good.
Musical passages. So
Exactly. I said it in the French. I mean,
a passage.
a passage.
But this is a patch where I love using the trig. So for some reason, I've played a lot of the game Civilization. The game Civilization is great because it has real songs for every nation you can play as, traditional songs with their traditional instruments as a soundtrack. So therefore, I know a traditional Chinese song by heart because I played several hundred hours. In that song, it's very clear that they're playing the same note in the pentatonic scale, but changing the bow direction.
right.
And I think that really sounds great with the trig keys, especially because you can have. Let me see if I can show you. You can have your pinky on the mod wheel.
Ooh.
Oh, look at you.
That
It
is.
is great.
On your controller.
So I'll play a little passage here.
This is another one I'm just thinking for people that don't, even just hearing that 2 seconds, I'm realizing that expression trick that you have done there, Ludwig, would also be a nice way to kind of handle that vibrato. But
Yep.
carry on, play us some.
So every time I'm playing a note twice, I'm re-triggering. So if you look at my left hand here.
And that has a distinctly different sound than if you were just lifting off the key.
Yeah, otherwise I would have to, I had to stop playing.
Oh, we could actually stop sharing so we can see your keyboard instead.
Oh, I can. Here, hang on a second. I can
Yeah.
make him bigger. Can I go this way and
yes.
make you bigger? Yes, but I can go bigger still. Prepare to be embiggened, Matthias. There you go. Okay.
Big end. Okay.
This
So
is
that means I can
broken
re-trigger the note when needed in this melody without it sounding unnatural because I need to, remove the bow from the string, the hand from the keys as it were.
Nice.
Right. Really nice.
So it's really, really useful to get a more kind of,
These
I
are the-
say realistic a lot, but playing like someone would play it, which is a topic
Right.
that, it's an endless topic, and I'm not saying you need to learn all that, but these small tricks really help getting, in any real instrument, it helps knowing a little bit about how they would play it.
Right. And there's a lot of this that I think is kind of a fun. I like all instruments that have that you don't. Let me try if I can describe it. The part of me that likes music making, which is similar to video games, is that like the same thing I like about video games, that you don't kind of learn everything you need to know in the first half hour. And I like instruments where you don't like there's an ongoing process to exploring and learning new tricks. And the difference about Friktion for me versus Europa or Grain is that the things that you're learning are very kind of real world insights where you go like, oh, that's how they do that. There was a comment in the chat. Someone asked how does I'm going to talk about my own world here for a second, but they asked how does Friktion do at fiddle? And just as an anecdote, the first night that I started playing with Friktion, I took a friend of mine who had recorded a fiddle solo, and I thought, well, let me try and recreate that using Friktion, and how close can I get? And I learned a lot about Friktion in the process, but I also learned a lot about, so that's what fiddle players are doing. They're like holding one note while they're gliding with another finger, and you are learning all that while you're, while I was in the process of trying to recreate that solo. So I think there's a lot of depth to be had in terms of playing and kind of learning about not just the panel settings, but kind of the fundamental technique that's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Definitely good.
we
So
should.
that's just the control keys. It's just kind of an overview of those. I think it's one of those things you'll get used to the more you're kind of playing.
Right.
And of course, it's very helpful to have 49 key keyboard at least.
Yeah, right.
It's really helpful.
It helps
But
to have that
again,
extra.
like Ludvig said, Friktion is designed to not need these at all. You can set it to a nice setting and play it.
Right.
And related to that, maybe a tip that people that have even trialed it already or even bought it already might not know, you can turn those control keys off if you want to, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but
So
that's-
I think
yeah.
somebody asked, and maybe this isn't true, but they had asked whether or not the double bass, I think, can go lower than, like, into the range. It starts to overlap with those control keys, and so they were kind of asking, is there a way to get down that far? I don't know what the actual ranges are there, but would that be a way to do it? Disable the control keys, and then you can go further?
No.
No, it's just...
disabling the control keys is primarily not to have them conflict with something else.
Okay.
So if you put Friktion in a combinator with a bunch of other instruments or players or something, you don't want to play a really low bass note on your cool synth, but also then happen to be in pluck when you're playing the violin that's going to be on top. Right?
I see, right. Right. And I noticed
it's
one
like a
thing...
safety valve that way.
I'm someone who relies on scales and chords a lot to kind of quantize me into a particular scale, and that was something I noticed where it was like if the harmonic control key is outside of the key that I'm in, suddenly it's getting quantized away. So that would, that can be in conflict as well. But okay. So
I would just want to say one thing, because when you play that very nice instrument, whose name I will not
avoiding the name again?
Someone said Erhu with an
Erhu.
Erhu with an actual
I
H.
don't know how to pronounce the who, but
and I just want to say, because I think it's a nice thing, it ties in with what you were speaking about, Ryan, in that you kind of continuously learn stuff. And I want to take it a little bit further. I like to be surprised continuously as well by what happens when you play a synthesizer instrument, especially something like this. And we had a kind of a design goal that not only should it be suitable and able to do, say, let's call it non-Western instruments, but also like non-earthly instruments.
Right, exactly.
There was actually a goal. I kind of nagged this all the time, that we wanted to be able to make alien sounds, stuff, instruments that sound like real instruments somehow, but you have for sure never heard them before.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. I think that even made it through. So me and Ryan together helped write a lot of, the copy and the script for the videos. There were even a line that says, "It sounds like your favorite string instrument that hasn't been invented yet."
Yeah,
that's exactly what we try to do, right? That since you have the basic parts, you can also make something that's realistic because it responds like a string, but take it a bit too far. And I think we'll have patches showing this.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I nominate whoever wants to do it to bring their panel up for a second while we're kind of talking about this. But that is well, I'm on the receiving end of your design goals. I only see it once those have been implemented, and so that was kind of a neat thing to me. The first thing that happens as a user is you are getting your head around kind of how to play it and the expressive stuff, but then you start connecting the dots and realizing the light bulbs are going off, where it's like, if I have control over the bow pressure, the finger pressure, the position of the finger, the amount of noise relative to the fundamental, I've got all of these ingredients that really define any instrument that I want to cook up in my head, the resonator, all these things. These are all things where I can start going, oh, okay, so I want an instrument that's kind of this size and this shape, but is played in this particular way. And, it really does...
and also, as always, because this is something I stress all the time when I talk to users and talk to people, you can always experiment. Nothing dangerous will happen.
Exactly.
Seriously, I think I've talked to people who are kind of afraid. It's scary too. If you can feel that I don't really know what I'm doing, so it's best that I don't turn this button because I don't know.
Right.
That's the wrong way of doing things. Just try it out and see what happens. Maybe it just turns into crap, but it's okay. You can just undo.
In some ways, it's almost, I hadn't thought of it until you describe it that way, that as an entry point into further sound design exploration, there's something comforting about controls that just make tangible physical sense at first. Before you're controlling, mod, envelope, LFO, these sort of synth-related sound design topics, or grain size or whatever, to kind of get into sound design by messing around with a panel like this, and having a word like pressure, which is like, got it. There's no learning curve there, and I know what's going to happen. That's interesting.
And I think that to this point, I mean, I work here now, but I haven't always worked here. I was a random reason user first, and that's how I learned almost everything in the program.
Yeah,
I loaded up something and I went, I don't know what to do, so I'm gonna try just going. Right. Okay, this seems to make it brighter. this seems to make it short, you know.
And I
think
did the same, but I did it on hardware synthesizer.
You guys, you've
Few years
sparked
earlier.
an idea.
I think that's the most important thing, like, you can do for yourself in music.
I think I'm going to dedicate a future stream entirely to people sharing their favorite happy accidents and things that happened from things going wrong, because those often are, you know, really cool. So,
and I think that's I had a talk with Peter Kern at Create Digital Music, CDM. And we got some questions that was really questions for Pelle, so he answered them. But one of them was, what was the thing that took the most time with making the Friktion, you know, model? What was the thing we spent the most time on that he really had to go in and go, oh, how does this work, you know?
right.
And funnily enough, it's not what you think. You would think, oh, it's coming up with this mathematical formula for the string vibration, that's the key, or it's making the perfect resonator or whatever. But it's actually making sure that all the parameters interact in a way that isn't shit. You know what I mean? So it should be really hard to turn one thing and one thing here and then suddenly get horrible feedback, or, you know, it goes silent. That's part of the challenge with physical modeling, that it can create these, because it's a description of an object, can create these situations where they go out of hand.
Right.
They start ringing out forever, or they get too loud, or they just disappear. So that's part of it. And because that's the part of it, it makes it even more rewarding to actually try things with the instrument, because we made sure you can't ruin it too much.
Right.
So I think that's the part of one of Pelle's greatest strength, is that he doesn't make parameters that makes no sense or doesn't do anything. They all have a purpose. Like, we would rather remove one thing that worked in like one case but not the other 20, and make sure that's part of some other parameter. I think that's really important, because that's how people learn.
Right. So you touched on, you kind of started getting into, we've had little hints at mentions of the resonator, and I wonder if that's a natural place for us to go, and then we'll start showing some of the more out there examples that you can do with Friktion.
Sure.
But it is worth talking about the resonator, because it really does have quite an impact on the sound. And what I'm hearing from you guys on this stream is that it actually is the least physical modeling part of a very physical modeling synth.
I think I've maybe unfairly said in a forum thread that it's the least exciting thing, which is not really true, but it's just in the very strict technical sense, I think it is.
Right.
Okay, should I?
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it.
I will share screen.
By the way, just for total transparency, I was of the opposite opinion and thought that was the most important thing, because it had a big section and a nice image. And I said that over and over again to Ludde and Pelle, and they said, actually, it doesn't make that big a difference. It's the other parameters. So I was, it's easy to think that.
But I mean, no, that's the wrong sound. We'll get into that later on. But okay, so it's a cello. Do you say cello or do you say cello?
I say cello, and I'm
cello,
sure
with a hard ch.
Mattias says cello, and so I'm sure there's places in the world where it's a potato kind of situation.
Okay, doesn't matter. So anyway, so what happens when you change resonator bodies easily to check? Let's move to. Yeah, it kind of changed the character of the sound for sure, and you get into some stranger things like. Or my favorite banjo.
Hey.
Don't get Ryan started.
I gotta tell you, the banjo. So people that are regular viewers of the stream and see, where is it? Back there. See that banjo sitting back there? They all got so excited when they realized there was a banjo resonator in Friktion, and I have to say, I unfairly got credit for like, oh, Ryan got the banjo into Friktion. I had nothing to do with it.
That's actually the only resonator I sampled, so that you can thank me. It's my wife's banjo, but it's not a 6-string banjo as in the image here, and it's not a 5-string banjo either. It's a 4-string tenor banjo.
But the resonator
This
is the same
has been a
size.
very big
It's
discussion.
been a,
between
yeah.
Brian
I
and
won't.
Ludvig.
I won't hijack this entire stream with my feelings about the 6-string banjo in the graphic. But the resonator size and the quality of the resonating is the same across all those instruments. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
and
think
so
that's
on.
what you'll find. That there are tons of cool ones here.
But let's
Yeah.
go back to the cello here, because I want to show you something that's you might overlook at the beginning. You have the size parameter. And this is cool. You're basically pitching the impulse response, which means like you're changing the size of the resonating body.
yeah, really.
So you
I've
can,
noticed that, particularly with cello, with the solo cello patch, I've noticed that sometimes I like to back that off a little bit and kind of mellow it out a little bit.
Yeah, it's
Right.
one of those. That's what you learn, that the resonator body, it makes a difference, but the size makes a huge difference. And
Oh, yeah.
that really makes it feel like, right, I can tweak this to something it was
that's
not
the way
supposed to do.
out of this world, so to speak. You can move away from existing things in a nice way. I think if you select something like the
Metal is
darbuka
very
or something.
obvious too.
Yeah, the metal thing.
Right. And you know what instantly happens there is that, like, even while you're moving that control as well, is that you start to realize, we started out on a solo violin and kind of the most traditional part of Friktion, and we've now very quickly landed into this, like, oh, it is a synth, and it can do
Yeah.
synthy things with an organic kind of DNA to it. And that the metal one's a good example of that.
Yeah. Let me go show you something else while I'm having a screen up here.
Yes.
Because let's move into the strange stuff here. This is a combinator patch that I made this today called Harm Sweep. And the thing is, I think I've done some routing. Yeah, I routed the mod wheel, which in my case, as you know, is the expression pedal, to Harmonics Position. So that means I can actually, like this. If you see the harmonics section in here, I can move the harmonics position with my foot like this while I'm playing.
Uh-huh.
And what does that mean? The harmonics position that's where you would place your fretting hand, your left hand, on the string, and that kind of determines which overtone you're hearing. So in the middle here, as you can see,
I'm going to live demo it. Wait, hang on. Look at this. We can do it this way.
all right, yeah.
Oh, he was quicker than me.
Yeah, I knew you were thinking it too, Mattias.
So you do that.
So if I play a harmonic on the 12th fret, I get the octave. If I play
Right.
it on the 7th fret, a 5th fret.
And why do you get that? It's because, sorry, I just have to, yeah.
The comments
The
now
twe-
have confirmed
the
I
12
do wear pants on this live stream. Yes, I do, guys.
Yeah, finally we got into it. Yeah, on the 12th fret, that would mean that's like halfway through the string. That's the middle of the string. So you're basically dividing the string into two.
Yeah.
That's what this means. This like diagram figure here. It means like there are two waveforms here. You see the two cycles. That
Yeah.
means so you get the double frequency. If I move it to here instead, it's going to be 3, and that means it goes. That brings it up. What is it? An octave and a fifth, right?
Yeah,
Because it's
I'm
It's
agreeing
hard to
without
explain
actually
this in
doing the math.
Because
but-
it's math.
because it's math.
Because math.
But the point is, you can actually, and here is 2 octaves up. You can actually see that's like 4 wave cycles instead of 2. So
Right.
So when I play this, I can actually do some interesting things, because when I'm in between here, I will get some kind of vague, not really an overtone sound, and I have touch really low here, and I think I kind of I have touch really, really low, but so you can just about hear it.
That's great.
Wow. Now I have
Go
to
on.
hang on. I wish I had an electric guitar to do this, but there's a Van Halen technique where, can I do it on an acoustic? I don't know. You do this, and then you move your finger down.
To get the wheel. Yeah.
Right.
You can't really hear it on an acoustic.
But it's also one of the oldest known instruments in the world, the Overtone Flute.
Oh, I thought you meant Van Halen was one of the
No.
musicians.
But this playing technique is exactly like an overtone flute, which is one of the oldest things you can play.
Yeah.
It's basically a hollowed out stick, and you can only play it with the same note because it's the same length and it has no hole.
Right.
So you have to blow different harmonics in it, and that's exactly that overtone.
That is really cool. So by having that hooked up to the mod wheel, then you're able to kind of play. Yeah,
I'm kind of modulating the sound with it, so it's.
That's really neat. Now I have to ask on behalf of the Reason community. I would be derelict in my duty if I didn't ask this. Could we share? You said you made this patch today, which means it's not in the Friktion sound bank. So is any patches that kind of are cool and neat? Could we tweet them or I don't know?
Absolutely.
Chat them, snap.
This is just a very plain combi patch, and I just needed to put it in the combinator because I wanted the mod wheel to go to the position. The position. Why did I want that? I don't remember right now. There was some good reason
to show it moving for the string.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to do it. I wanted to show it moving. Exactly, Mattias. And I also put it through a pulverizer, and because you always do that.
Wait,
Yep,
hang on.
Put some pulverizer on it.
Yep.
That is a tip straight from the Reason designer. That's
to be serious, I really wanted some distortion, and the distortion in pulverizer is because I wanted this kind of thick sound. I want to bring the overtones. If I turn it off, it's going to sound
a bit.
Oh, so there's almost a dynamic range to the overtones that's more dynamic.
Just a bit thicker somehow.
But
there was for a very long time, it was a running gag in the office to end any sentence with in Swedish then, and some pulverizer on that, which is just this is going to be a good PowerPoint presentation, and some pulverizer on that, or I love this new song with some pulverizer on.
Yeah. Right, but that is for people that don't mess. Some people fall into their routines with Scream 4 or these other Audiomatic, other methods of coloration. And just as a total aside, unrelated to Friktion, like that's always a little fun thing to have in your mind as you make music over the next few days. Is try a different coloration method, and so get on board Pulverizer if you haven't been. Someone asked a question. Beat Boy asked, why didn't you guys just call it modeled stuff instead of?
I think I even responded in the comments, but. Even with these cool sounds that we'll show, and some of them that sound decidedly not stringish, it's very much built for strings.
Right.
Like all the controls are built for,
Okay, so that was, okay, I didn't understand. I thought it was kind of question just the Friktion name. No, but that's not it.
Well, that's another story.
Okay.
We have the person behind that name idea, manning the chat on YouTube. Stefan came up with
Friktion?
Yeah.
Oh,
good job, Stefan.
Hey, Stefan,
He's the guy.
Way to go!
Kudos.
I have just as an aside, I accidentally kind of leaked Friktion in a video 2 weeks early, and
I know
people saw the name, and based on the name, they were speculating. I bet it's a physically modeled string instrument. And I was like, whoa, what a good name if they gathered.
Right, exactly. That's good. That was quick. But the entire model is very much based on it being a string and all the controls being a string.
Yeah.
If you wanted to make it very multi-purpose, you'd lose a lot of the immediacy and understandability, if you want, of the controls. So like the finger, position, string, all of those things would suddenly make much less sense. And I think it would be worse to use for it. I think it would confuse people more and be hard to get that violin tweak that you want. So
plus it's something really nice with the fact that here is a string model, a modeled string instrument, and Pelle sits there and says, actually I found it could do pretty good flutes as well. That's something he kind of finds out by tweaking stuff, and so I really love that. The
flutes, I have to say, the flutes are phenomenally convincing.
Yeah,
yeah,
good.
In fact, there's a thing, I haven't messed with them enough to find out how to control this in the way that I've heard it in the demos, but there is a technique on flute that I hear flautists do, where they sort of like they can blow more air out, and the actual sound of the air becomes part of the articulation.
It's like overblowing, right?
Yeah, but does it actually? Is that what it is? They're overblowing the overtone, and so it just
No, overblowing is getting the overtone. Yeah.
I mean, I think of it, if I jump back 40 years, I think of it as a thing I hear on like Jethro Tull records, where it actually like is used as a crescendo thing. So when they have a phrase that's like do or whatever,
Yeah.
I think that's an actual line. But you hear the do and it does that, and I've heard it in demos, and I go, ooh, it's that flute thing, and there's no control for like air. I guess that's noise or something. I don't know where it's coming from.
That's got to be noise.
Yeah, it's got to be noise. Exactly.
It's really neat.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, Lou, it's a fun surprise when it does that. But I think it's sometimes a coincidence. Like in this case, it's like, right, flutes are generally pretty clean. It's overtones and it's noise. That could do a flute, right? But if you wanted to do like a blown instruments modeled synth, it would have a lot more to kind of really, make that good.
Right. There's a question that came in just up above, sort of, I guess we'll chalk this up to pushing Friktion outside of its bounds. They said if it's physical modeling, and if you can try and design instruments kind of by thinking about them, could you try and design a piano using Friktion, it being a stringed instrument? And that seems like now you're getting into hammer action versus bowing or plucking, but
You might be able to design a piano string.
Right, exactly.
But, piano string.
Pianos, like already there, like pianos per note. If you look inside a piano, there are plenty of strings.
But I start
Okay,
wondering...
there are plenty of strings on at least 4 on the violin as
What I
well, so
imagine you
maybe-
could do is you could design something piano-ish, and maybe you land in a weird spot that's even cooler than you were going. But like, even if you went at Friktion and then, I don't know, add a transient shaper above it to kind of give it a little extra spunk on the attack.
There's a lot to try there, yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I guess you could. To start with, the strings are totally different. I think that would be a very huge difference. They're much longer and it's totally different.
Maybe this is a good place for me to mention the hashtag that I've had on screen this entire stream. We would, for anyone that's been wondering for an hour and 7 minutes, the reason Friktion hashtag that we have up on screen is something that comes from Stefan, a request from Stefan. He would love to hear, in his role doing social media and things, he'd love to hear what you guys are doing, and I think we all would love to. I mean, I think everybody.
Yeah. Oh, I would love.
We've been at the company. Everybody's been watching these videos that are coming out of people, from Jordan Rudess on down to just any old person that made a video about it. We've been kind of devouring them and seeing what people are doing and sharing them internally in Slack chats and stuff, because they're so fun to see what people are doing with them. So if you guys out there are making sounds with Friktion via SoundCloud, via YouTube, via Instagram, wherever you're publishing that stuff, hashtag it with Reason Friktion, and we'll be checking them out. And I don't know, maybe next week I'll play some of them on the top of the show or something. I make no promises, but why not?
Yeah, I'll set up an alert or a notification in Twitter, so every time there's a Reason Friktion, I'm gonna see it.
Right. For you guys, these things like this, when these things come out, it must really be like your. I don't want to call it your baby, but it's a little bit, right? Like you've been living with this thing in your world, and suddenly it's out to other people, and you get to see what other people are doing with it. That's got to be fun.
Yeah, I think that's almost the best part, to release something and let others experience it, and actually seeing that they kind of liked it.
Right.
That's really, really what makes it super, super awesome.
I'm checking in with the comments here. Matt Aguila says the next rack extension name should be Sponk, which I think was the term I used for the hammer striking a piano, which I don't know how I feel about that word. Sponk.
I mean, it is a Swedish word with an O.
Sponk. There you go. And there was another question from Navi Retlab, which I've probably still said his name wrong for 10 years. He says, I have to say, Friktion is epic for guitar emulation, too, which surprised me as well. There are, and not just, you could think of the traditional kind of plucked guitar, but I've heard some patch examples of like chunky rock guitars where it's like, whoa, that's Friktion?
Yeah. Yeah,
haven't
I've
really
heard a
got
couple.
that
I
one.
think I've heard one that Naviretla did even.
Is
that
it?
sounded really, really cool.
I'm going to attempt to find it while we're talking. This could be a
Well,
disaster.
You
Maybe
haven't-
that gives me some time to show you a cool patch in the meantime.
Yes.
Yeah, do it,
that,
do it, do it.
please. You do that.
So you do that. If anyone hasn't seen Harmon Quest, I urge you to do that, and then you'll be in on mine and Ludde's references.
Yes.
Oh wait, I found it. I'm going to play this real quick just before you get.
Yeah,
into
yeah,
that.
go for it,
Okay,
go for it.
this I don't know if this was the one that he did, but I heard this.
Oh,
I mean, listen to that.
wow!
Like even the talk about
That's
Van
impressive.
Halen.
I don't think that's the one I heard, but that's really cool.
Really good, right?
Well done.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Back to you.
Yeah, I'm going to show you a little bit of, one thing that I found amazing with Friktion that I didn't think about was you talked about the resonator body. So if I take the Violin Solo, it's a good bass patch, right? The resonator body has one that is dry. That means no resonator body. And I think this really made me appreciate Friktion even more as a synthesizer. Because once you remove that, you're left with just the string in its kind of weird, perfect form, right? It's not going through anything, being amplified by something. It's just... It sounds super unnatural, in a great way. And I think the controls that affect the strings are some of the most exciting ones to use for that. So if I just quickly change release damp and take that away, and increase the slope and high damp. Suddenly you have this synth pad that just has a really cool sound that I can't explain why I like so much, but it has this really unique timbre. So one of the
Yeah.
patches I made with that was really taking advantage of the gliding. So the gliding and the string logic of how you play it still works. So I have a lot of glide in this glide pad patch. The bow is really slow, and I've taken away all the accents, so there's no bow attack, but there's a lot of noise and a lot of glide time. So now you get this nice glidey pad.
Oh, that's really cool. That sounds like a weird synth attempt at the THX sound you just did there.
Yeah, it's some kind of it sounds like nothing I could
Yeah.
remember hearing.
It does
which
not
is
sound like
great.
an analog polysynth.
No, it sounds
right.
like
Sounds like
something
It sounds like
else.
neither an analog polysynth nor an acoustic instrument,
Right.
Yeah.
yet it's its own little.
And of
thing.
course, you still have all the pluck, which actually sounds really nice. And you have the harmonics that still work.
See, this is a thing that I get
So all
really
these things
excited.
that wouldn't really, they're supposed to work with a violin. Now
I
they
get
work with
excited
this
about this
weird
stuff.
patch.
I think about producers, particularly that are sort of on the pop end or the commercial end of music production, that are always kind of looking for a little bit of an edge and a little bit of a I don't want to use the same subtractive sounds that we've been hearing for 30 years. And that's where I start going like, oh, there's you could take, a melody that might sound almost cliche or kind of just expected on a certain synth patch, and suddenly it has this kind of hooky uniqueness to it when you just kind of play it on something that your ear can't quite, latch onto.
And there's- yeah.
Probably, I would imagine, I wasn't a music producer at this time, but I would imagine in the early days of FM synthesis, there was a similar feeling of this is a whole new sound that's
Yeah, right. What's going on
What
here?
is,
kind
who's
of,
making
yeah.
these bell sounds? Yeah,
Yeah, and that's why that's the beauty of the DX7 is not perhaps the synth itself and its glorious set of parameters, but rather the immense number of patches that just happened due to it coming out.
Yeah,
So many patches that you hadn't heard before.
right.
I'm just gonna do a super quick another just tweak something without looking. So if I start from just, I always start from the violin solo because it gives you an idea. I just again set that to dry, take down the octave. This is good to know. Transpose octave. Just if you want to play bass or cello, it's 1 or 2 down, right? So you get the full range.
Right.
But the bowing section, I think, makes the most exciting changes here. So bring up the mod wheel. The position. It's an almost phaser-like sound.
Yeah.
And the same with the pressure, which I can get really almost mean.
You know what that reminds me of in an unrelated way? This was a thing that DJ Lucky Date showed me a long time ago in the BV512 vocoder. Is that the correct number?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a thing called shift. It's this knob, and he's like, I don't know what it does, but when you turn shift in EQ mode, it kind of creates a similar kind of whatever that is, that grating, sweeping kind of sound.
Right.
Yeah, it's great. And what you can really, I mean, the thing that starts happening when you have this bass, kind of like an oscillator almost, right? Now you can start adding things like a filter. So I'll just take up a sweeper here, take one of the filters taken from Europa, maybe the ladder filter. And suddenly you have this quite interesting sound that, you know, is very different from what you could do inside Friktion, because you have this, you know, extra thing. It's easy to forget that there's stuff outside the instrument. Right?
Just as a musician, to kind of take off all of my company ties here for a second, I love watching you guys think through things. Like I could watch that stream just as a viewer of Mattias using and Ludvig using the things they helped design, because you guys have these neat ways of approaching them. So that's really kind of cool.
Yeah. It's that's my other recent tips, except, you know, touch all the rotaries, is add all the devices, right? see what happens. Devices. You know, do one and then go. Okay, that was cool. So now we obviously need to add more devices. Okay, and we need to add even more devices.
More devices.
I also need the pulverizer for det.
Yeah, that's right. It's like Portlandia. Put a bird on it.
And you can get this really, you know, big sound. And then eventually you need to make a song and you remove all the things, right? Because it needs to sit in the mix. But still, it gives you something interesting.
That is the great challenge. You know, the more experienced sound designers learn that there's a difference between making a patch sound amazing when it's auditioned versus a patch sound amazing in a mix. Sometimes you have to...
Yeah, right, exactly. So I think that's something you learn. But it's also really cool. So let's say you had this sound. One thing you could always do is play that, record it, and then bounce that to a sample or an audio track.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you EQ it and you just have that for one section or trigger it in one place. It doesn't need to be this instrument that lives forever, right?
Right. There was a question that came in. I'm jumping around a little bit here, but there was a question that came in the early end of the stream, and I made a mental note that we were going to talk about it during the Resonator chat. And then I didn't. So I'm going to ask now. Their question was about why is there not, I guess, a rear panel input for the Resonator? And you guys could probably answer this better than me, but I think the answer lies in the RV7000. Isn't that kind of true?
Yeah. The answer is we could have. It would be possible, I guess, but there's no fundamental difference between loading something into RV7000. So
because it's sort of that convolution
exactly.
shaping.
And there are a couple of parameters there that would not, I think, work with a I'm not quite sure actually. The direct, for example, maybe it would. I'm not. Super
But this
sure
is, I
about
imagine
that.
we're on the edge of what you were talking about with Pele, where like in the physical modeling, there's a certain delicacy. I don't mean that in a eating way, but a delicateness maybe, to things going wrong that you have to kind of keep, to a preset kind of set of resonators and other settings. So
Well, I think it's more about that, because the resonators are very specific, they're impulse responses and therefore instruments that you're supposed to put a string through in a way, right? So they're not cool reverbs or super exciting sound effects. It might be less fun than you think. And you can easily try this by using the RV7000 and putting, say, just an impulse response of a violin or cello body, which you can find somewhere online. You'll find, it's a lot about the complete package there.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's. I think the answer is it's not really so much bang for the buck. It's not like. So we of course we could have done that, but we usually try to not just throw in stuff that are not very useful or special.
this is the great
In terms of
challenge you
parameters
have
or-
in all things, is that it's easy to throw everything at an instrument, but it comes at the there's a diminishing return where it actually hurts the overall experience of the instrument to throw everything at it. And I think
Yeah,
we've all
and we-
seen, you see it a lot in like free BSTs where it's like, people that have the coding know-how, but maybe not the design discipline to know when to kind of hold off at throwing everything at
And
it.
we are aware that there are different schools of thoughts. Some people actually prefer having more is more, the more is more principle. But well, we
The
don't
Yngwie
really.
principle.
We
Well,
We
in
like
related
it.
to that, can I throw one of these another one of the questions from the chat that I don't want to ignore? There was like a hey, why
Yeah,
didn't you do
sure.
this question? And it's about the number of on the matrix. We have 4 slots for modulations that are in the matrix, and they were asking why aren't there not more of those?
Yeah, that's a good question in a way. I don't know how to answer this really, but the thing is, to start out with, the matrix was, I don't think it was even there.
No, not in the first versions at all.
So it was never considered to be the most important of components in this design. And making a huge matrix like we have, or a larger matrix like we have in Europa or Grain or and so on, that would kind of send the wrong message, was what we thought. a
Yeah,
little
right.
bit. So in terms of what is this? How do you use this? What is required to use this? We wanted to stress the actually articulation and the performance side of it, which may or may not have been the right decision.
We'll evaluate. But I appreciate the question there.
I
And
appreciate
we
there's a
generally-
modesty. Ludvig always has a modesty to his decisions after the fact, where he doesn't claim to be the arbiter of what is right or wrong.
Because quite often there is. I mean, I've been doing this for quite a long time, and sometimes you're right, and sometimes, I mean, you're never quite wrong or you're never quite right. There are always different schools of thoughts and different opinions, always different, lots and lots of different opinions. So you choose the path that you really kind of think is right and that you feel strongly. And we're not. I mean, we test stuff and we discuss stuff quite a lot.
Right.
Oh yes, sometimes very heated discussions.
Oh yeah, so it may be the case that not all of us feel the same way about certain decisions, of course.
I've been
But,
in a couple of
the
those.
end,
Matthias and
yeah.
I have sat at a nearby burger restaurant at lunch, drawing on napkins and going, "No, it should be like this." And
But this is how it's.
napkins is good. So we could have crammed in more matrix slots, I guess. We also, I don't really like to put tabs or
Yeah,
several
I was going to
pages.
comment on tabs. Tabs is
In this
from a
type
from a
of
user
instrument.
interaction perspective sometimes a little bit problematic, because it's always a bit of a hidden information. And of course you can show that it's there and you can learn that it's there, but in the very immediate, okay, what's going on here? Then suddenly there's information that you won't see that's going on. That could affect the sound a lot. It could be, LFO 100% to the pitch, but it's on page 2 and you're on page 1. So you load up a patch and it goes wee wee.
Right.
Why is it going wee wee? I don't know. And we design things for a lot of different users. There are tons of different reason users of
Right.
various types, and they're using the DAW, or they're using the plugin, or
Right.
they're using it super professionally and have won multiple Grammys, or they're just starting out, or
Sure.
whatever it is. And we need to somehow find a balance there of inviting and understandable versus can do everything you can imagine, or
Right.
like Complex One was almost in the other direction. Complex One was on purpose quite a complicated synthesizer, where the little section that is, I think it's called algorithm, or let me double check that real quick. The section that's called function. It's enormously difficult for someone who's not familiar with this to know what that does. So let me just show you real quick, right? Here you have function. Here are the things you can choose from. X minus Y.
That's obvious.
Absolute.
Oh,
X
well, yeah,
plus
classic
Y.
little
Min,
algebra.
max, X is bigger than Y. Sample hold, but not saying sample hold. SH. Harmonic and pitch. This one I'm sure a lot of people don't know what they do.
Right.
So harmonic, that rescales any CV signal into the harmonic series. Right? It's a very tricky thing. Sometimes we go in that end, sometimes we go in the other. And I think with Friktion, we really wanted it to be accessible first. That the main purpose of it was playable.
Hold on for a second. Continue speaking and just.
Yes. Just having a very playable instrument where you could look at many of the parameters and kind of get what's going on.
Right.
That
Right.
Position, pressure, accent. You can start guessing and you'll quickly hear.
Yeah.
So I know that's not a very nice answer to hear if you really want a tab, and I'm not saying we'll never do it, but that was the thinking behind it. And I
Yeah,
think
right,
it's
sure.
important to talk about that stuff.
I have to say, unrelated, I only realized when Ludwig walked away that he and I are almost mystery door twins. We both have the mystery white door, the where does it go?
I'm a bit jealous
but also,
about that.
I was going to say, there was a comment that I was going to just comment on in the chat, this unrelated. Well, following up on this, Matt Aguilar said something like, heated discussions? Who ends up slamming the door and walking away? And it's almost worth mentioning this because I think it's some kind of the nice thing of these discussions is that it's not that. It's, when Mattias and I have had heated discussions, it's almost more bonding than it is, it's not a slam the door and walk away thing. It's the same way when people make music together that you have these sort of passionate feelings about how something should go. And it's kind of one of the nice things about the collaborative nature in Reason Studios is that it is a place where you can have those and the best idea wins, and I've seen it go certain ways. I've seen it with, Ludwig had certain ideas on a certain instrument, how it should go, and someone else can make the case more strongly in favor of a certain thing, and things change. So it's not slamming doors over in Stockholm.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, exactly. I
realize
and sometimes there is slamming doors, but, which can be fine.
you just undermine my point.
Very rarely, though.
Then very rarely. But then you
With
go away
Swedes.
and you think about it. You can come back and go, you know what? Fair point. Let's try that thing or whatever. Right.
Right,
But the
right.
discussions lead us forward. I think that's
We
really
haven't mentioned Andy at all. Andy.
Yes.
Oh, that's a great
geez.
that's a great
This,
point.
that's our graphic designer. I mean, I would say he and Pelle have actually built this thing with a lot of input from Mattias and me. But so he's the one doing all the design of the actually graphic user interface.
For all of our stuff.
All
So
that
it's
stuff,
worth
yes.
giving him a
Absolutely.
big shout out for everything. I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he also has very strong opinions in terms of how things should be laid out or work, and what's good and what's not
Right.
good at all.
I've
Yeah,
watched
and I
him in the early days. You guys will kind of define what an instrument might be, and then you kind of throw all this stuff at him, and he's got to figure out how to lay it out in a way that just looks. Oh, of course, that's why that's
Then
there.
he usually goes for quite some time. Say, oh, it's crap. I can't do anything about it. Crap.
Yes, yeah, it's a very classic Andy thing to sit and work really hard with something and saying it's horrible, he's not getting anywhere, and then suddenly one day he's almost finished and it looks
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
It's like this.
That's how it
It's the troubled artist, right?
Yeah.
I think that might be a fun thing. That little team. Pelle and Andy doing I don't want to call it grunt work, but doing all of the really, the
real
program and
The heavy
design.
lifting.
The heavy lifting, thank
Yeah.
you. And me and Ludde, design input and kind of high level, what does this mean for Reason and what should the product be. Us four have done a couple of products, and it's really fun working in a
Good
small
team.
group like
Really
that.
good team.
Yeah,
Right.
So we did, Complex One was from the same kind of constellation and so on.
It's
So-
like a movie trailer from the minds of the
yeah, right, from the creators of. I think the really important thing, a lot of people are asking if I wear pants.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I do wear pants.
Yes, because when Ludwig went out of the room, he confirmed the second
Yeah,
pair
he
of pants.
confirmed.
Yeah, I had
So,
to go out on urgent
We needed that. I think
sheet
everybody
business.
needed that reassurance that everybody here is actually
Yes,
wearing pants.
there's pants.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
For all the years I've done live streams, I don't know why people have this obsession with pants when they only see you from like here up. There's just this. I don't know, is it anxiety or have they had too much PTSD from getting on chat roulette or something? I don't know. They're just always like, but are they wearing pants?
Yeah.
Well, we should. I've held you guys up and it's late over there in Sweden, so I'm gonna let us go. I wonder, Mattias, I'm gonna throw a curveball at you because Navi Red Lab said I just sent Mattias an email with guitar
saw.
patches and an MP3 demo that he made with Friktion. And how easy is it for you to route that MP3 into our stream?
If I have the email, very easy.
We're
do have the email.
we're walking without a tightrope. What if he sent us the worst demo ever? No, he's talented. So
That is it's a very interesting question you have there. Okay,
How's it going?
let's find out. I'm trying. I think I need to set this up real quick in loopback. So say something smart and funny while I do that.
well, here's what I will say. That's
Sorry.
Ludwig. I was like, I'm already hearing it. I
me.
will say, and I'll just reiterate this for people based on the hashtag that's on the screen. So if you missed it when I mentioned it earlier, I'll mention it again. We want to hear what you guys are doing with Friktion. Maybe you're trying Friktion in the trial mode. Maybe you've bought Friktion and you're exploring it and you're trying things out. We'd love to hear what you're doing with it because we're like it's as much as it's a new thing out there in the world, it's a new thing for us too, and we're just all excited by how it's what music it is resulting in. And so we've got a hashtag on the screen, Reason Friktion, with a K. Maybe it's worth mentioning. In fact, actually. This is a thing, if we can talk Swedish pronunciation for a second. There are people in the company that still refer to this as friktion.
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 I don't think we do really. Or do we?
It's
a joke.
it's never supposed to be that.
Well, I guess it depends. Maybe there's people in the corner going, no, it is. No, but it's that is the classic spelling. Am I correct with the K?
Yeah.
In Swedish.
Yeah, exactly. That's
for
the
word
Swedish
friction.
word for friction. Yeah.
And so that's sort of how the name came to be,
Yeah.
an homage to its origins coming out of Sweden. Frieden.
Freedom.
Freedom.
That's like American Sweden finally. Freedom.
Freedom.
So
Yeah.
I have gotten this set up, and I think I can play a little bit from it.
all right.
You tell me if you hear sounds. Navi Retlav sent this post-rock friction, it's called. Here we go. A lot of friction in that.
That is cool. Yeah. There was a comment that came in, and that sounds great, by the way, Never Relevant. And yeah, it's a whole lot of friction doing a whole lot of different things in there, which is fantastic. There was a comment that came in from Night Shift in the chat, aka Koichi, who some people might know because he was a stream guest. For me to show, I don't have the capability to show it right now live on the stream. A patch that he made called Cellbot or Cellbot, if you're a cello pronunciation person, but I show it in my tutorial. So if people watch the tutorial that I made, it's it's a dual arpeggiator hooked up to a cello patch that creates this really kind of neat, almost sort of string quartet by holding down one chord, and it's moving back and forth between plucked and bowed sounds. It's really a neat patch. And Koichi, what I will say, if you're okay with it and give it your blessing as the creator of that patch, Stefan and I are going to work out a way to kind of share something like the patch that Ludvig made. Maybe I'll have to look back at the stream. I think Mattias has done a couple of kind of little patch things in his examples as well. So we'll find a way to send some stuff out. And if you're okay with it, Koichi, we will include Chelbot in that as well, because I think that's a nice patch that people could have fun playing with. So,
yeah,
gentlemen, I think that is our time. And I see the sun going down over there, Sweden. It's Mattias. So
yeah, it's been down.
has it?
It's good.
We
welcome the darkness back, finally.
Right. You're into the dark part of the year, right? Oh, good. Koichi says definitely happy to share the patches. So there you go, guys. We'll if you heard that in the tutorial, we'll include that in whatever method we have after the stream of Stefan distributing some of these patches to people.
And really, do just post as many cool sounds you've made as you can. I love hearing what you do, because everyone plays it differently.
Right.
Everyone kind of tweaks it differently. It's really exciting to hear. I mean, it can do a lot that we haven't thought about. Like Ludvig said with Pelle finding the flutes, I'm sure some of you will find stuff that we haven't even began thinking of. So
if someone finds out how to make a piano and makes a good one, save it, share it, include spunk
or just
in the
a
title.
Nice sound. I just want to hear sounds.
Nice sound.
I love sounds. Don't
I
they
agree.
sound like something?
That's true. Yeah, it doesn't actually need to. You can have a goal, and then you can fall short of the goal too. And so maybe you're on your way to create a piano and you end up creating a synth, and it's a weird sound that just works on its own. So
make more sounds in general.
Make
it's always fun.
more sounds. That's right. That's the lesson. So what we've learned today is add a pulverizer to it and make more sounds. And then the classic Ludvig one as well, that
try everything.
Try everything.
Once.
Yes.
At least.
Once.
That's right. Try everything once. Yes. Everything in moderation, including moderation. So, well, listen, guys, I'm gonna switch over to, I'm gonna take you guys off screen, and I'm gonna throw up our intro music as our outro music. I'm gonna say goodbye to people, but I want to thank you so much for joining us and spending your evening with us, and thanks to the people that have been in your house hiding out of frame for letting us borrow you as well.
Yep.
All right.
That one other room is really getting lonely.
Right.
About that, yeah.
That's the funny thing about me and Ludvig. We have very different sizes on our living quarters.
Yeah.
I have 2 rooms. One is this. That includes the kitchen. This is also the kitchen. Ludvig has,
more?
how many
I
rooms?
don't want to go there. Let's not go there.
It's over 12.
No, really? I'm moving in. I'll be there. I actually won't be there next week. They won't let me come there next week. So.
You should be.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. And I'll see you, I'm sure, on a meeting tomorrow, but everyone else will see you some other time. All right. Cool. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Well, guys, that means it's just me saying goodbye to you here. So I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank, again, I just want to give them the big shout out, Ludvig and Mattias, for giving us their time and giving us their insight. You saw the hashtag #ReasonFriction with a K. Send us those patches and, or not patches, but show us what you're doing. Send us some music, SoundCloud, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. Tweet us. I don't know, whatever. Snap talk it. Whatever's happening out there. Send it to us so we can hear what you're doing. I'm going to see you next week. Let me tell you just quickly next week what my plan is. There was a question that came up in the chat 2 weeks ago where somebody asked, how do you write vocal melodies on the fly? And I thought, you know what? That's almost a topic unto itself that I could spend the time with you doing that. So I am going to do that next week. We're going to be looking at sort of how you can find harmonies in your production. If you've worked with a vocalist and you want to help them find harmonies, or you do vocals yourself and you've been wondering how to do that, I'm going to show you the tricks I've come up with for that. And that'll be it. So we'll see you next week. And I hope everyone has a good week. Make a lot of music. Add a pulverizer to it. See you back here.